Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. We're starting a new round of conversations with our local comic book creators from the Philippines. So, for this inaugural episode of this hopefully long set of speakers again, is not rel- when I met you, it was during the pandemic, so you were relatively a new player back then, but it's been like
Yeah,
5 years already, I think. five,
yeah.
3 to 5 years already. So,
Everything
writer,
post-pandemic feels like it's both like a really long time ago, and also it feels like it was just yesterday. Yeah.
so one of our new players sa ating community, writer, publisher, Sir Rexy Dorado. Hi, sir.
Hey, what's up, John? Good to see you again.
Yeah. So para sa mga nakikinig natin, Sir Rexy is, would you like to introduce yourself better than I did?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I guess so I'm the writer of the Maharlika comic series. And so that one is about 2 volumes in, third volume coming out soon. The also Thank You and More Power with Sampai, which is a lot earlier. I think we're gonna get our third issue out in the next month or so. And also with John Ray, publisher of the Raygun imprint, which has those two stories, and then also Nightgate by Lucia Su.
Also, let's talk with Reagan in print first. So it's John Ray's initiative, or is it yours?
I had started it so because we were under Maharlika was under the Pen Lab umbrella before.
Mhm.
And kind of after that, I was, one of the top things in my mind was like, how do we make sure that kind of people who were kind of publishing under Pen Lab, but like want to kind of continue on and do their own thing. How do we support them? And I think for Maharlika and then also for Senpai, I think if they fit under this kind of sci-fi fantasy genre, more manga inspired that I'd wanted to kind of go deeper into. And so I wanted to kind of start an imprint around that. And then I reached out to John Ray also just to see if he wanted to be involved in it. And he came up with a name. And I think it wasn't intentionally Ray as in John Ray, but I think just coincidentally, he had a list of names, and then that was the one I was like, yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Um,
Very,
so he
ano
came.
rin siya, it's very reminiscent of
Yeah.
a popular anime here in the
Oh,
Philippines,
yeah.
Ghost
Yeah.
Fight. So they always shout at Reagan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was my first. I think that was my first ever anime was Ghost Fighter, and it's also uh kind of really like emblematic for me of like one is like that generation of like my generation of people who grew up with it like and had that as one of their first anime, and then two, it's this thing that's like really symbolic of um not just not just Japan and anime, but also like a very Filipino take on it, where because I lived here for 10 years. I lived in Dumaguete for 10 years, and then I went to the US. And so when I was here, it was Ghost Fighter, and it was Eugene and Alfred and
Yeah,
Dennis and Vincent. And then I moved to the US, and it was Yu Yu Hakusho, and
was
it was
Yosuke.
Yusuke, and yeah, yeah. And then here it's Ray Gun. I think in the US it's a Spirit Gun, and
Yes,
then
very
in
good.
in Japan, it's Rei, like REI, like as in spirit kind of gun.
Yeah,
And so
and
it's like a
the Filipino
Filipino.
dub of
Yeah.
Ghost Fighter, Yu Yu Hakusho, is
Yeah.
really Filipinized so much that it's so different from the Japanese and the American version.
Yeah, yeah. So I like that a lot on I mean that's also why, Thank You and More Power like that's the title of it, is like it's an English phrase, but like only Filipinos really use it.
Yeah, the more power part, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so I like those, like where our Filipino identity crisis of like it might be in English, it might be Japan inspired, but we have our own specific kind of take on it.
So yeah, you mentioned that you grew up in Dumaguetes, but you
Mm.
migrated to the United States when you were 10.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
you grew up in a very different environment,
mm.
wherein were you able to like read local comic books when you were still here?
I did a little, or mostly Pugad Baboy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Oh,
yeah, but most of the comics I read were like, so it was Marvel, like more X-Men-ish stuff, and then Asterix and Obelisk. I was actually like, I think I read a lot of Asterix and Obelix. And then Pugad Baboy, I think were the three things that I remember from when I was growing up here.
so as a writer, were did you specifically write si Maharlika for the comic book medium, or was it for a different medium altogether?
It was a different uh so when I was in high school, I wanted to get into film.
Mm,
Um, wanted to be like a movie director, but I had no idea, like how hard of a path that is, especially if you want to do fantasy sci-fi. Like, it's a 1 in a million chance that you can convince a studio to put money behind.
yeah, it's very
Um,
expensive.
yeah, but I still, I wasn't thinking about it, and so I would just like I started writing a script that was this sci-fi dystopian thing that wasn't Filipino because at the time I was like trying to not be Filipino. I was in the US and there were no Asian people in my part of the US. And uh so it was just this broader like dystopian story, and then some of the elements of that carried over into Maharlika. Um but I kind of like I tried that, and then I never finished it and kind of laid it down in when I was in high school. And then uh I think when I came back for because I moved back for Kumu when we started. I think we were 1 year into building our startup, and we moved back to kind of do it full time. And then I started to kind of think a lot more about uh I mean, the other context is like before Kumu, I had a nonprofit that brought Filipinos back from the US, the UK, Europe, like brought them back to the Philippines for like 3-month internships. And the whole idea there was like we have these 10 million Filipinos that live abroad. For the most part, we think of the Philippines as like where we're from, like some like more past oriented, and starting to shift that to like it's actually where this like really exciting future is being built. And there's a lot of people making things, whether it's in business or creatives or um, it's like the people are actively building new things in the Philippines. So it's kind of like that future, like Filipino futurism thing that was always on my mind. Um, and uh, and so that idea plus the that kind of old urge to make a sci-fi dystopian story kind of came together into Maharlika. At first, I was thinking of like doing it as an anime script, and then I got into manga around the same time. And I was like, I don't know, like when we're ever gonna, like anime is like again long shot, and then years and years and years, and then I realized like, okay, with a comic, we can really just, if I can find the right partner, we can just start putting the story out to people with just a team of two creators.
Mm. Okay, so John Ray is a very good illustrator, also creator on his own right. I've seen some of his works
Yeah.
before. How did you two meet up, and how did the collaboration start?
Yeah, I think because at the time I was still in Kumu, and he was working at Gigil.
Mm.
So we actually like Kumu and Gigil worked together a bit, but like we were never in the same meetings. Um but he knew of me a little bit because of that, but we hadn't talked before. I had initially reached out to a different artist, Koi Carrion.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So he did like some of the first character designs, but he was just busy, so he couldn't commit to doing a full volume or a full story. So I started looking for another artist, and then I found John Ray just on Facebook. I think it was one of the comics Facebook groups he was posting on. I don't remember which one it was. It might have been Comic Con. It might have been. yeah, it might have been something else, but I saw his posts there, and then I saw that like his banner was like a guy in a kind of space suit in front of the Banawe rice terraces. So it's
Yeah,
like, very Filipino setting, and then like very futuristic kind of character. And then I saw his one shots that were like, I think it's called Akma Corp. They're like 2 to 3 page stories that are almost like Filipino Black Mirror, like uh but more, I mean, like less, semi-horror, more kind of comedic takes on like what tech how Filipinos would use like super futuristic technology. So he had this one that my favorite is the Eraser HD Eraser head, that you use if you already watched your favorite movies, you can erase your memory so you can watch it again for the first time.
yeah,
Um, and I saw his Tressa fan art. Like he had some really good Tressa fan art. That was also like where I got to see more of his like action oriented stuff. Um, and so it just felt like a fit.
yeah,
And then I reached
yeah.
out and yeah.
The first, uh, I forgot the title, but the first, my first introduction to John Ray's work was a Sky Gypsies.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
very sci-fi,
Mm.
and I was very. I actually thought he was like seasoned comic vet
Mm.
during that time, but apparently I was thinking of somebody else. But yeah, he's very good. He's very good.
Yeah, super good. Like super lucky to be able to work with him.
One thing that I learned when I was when I interviewed him for our Comics Kwentuhan was that you're already done with the script
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for the whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a rare thing here in the Philippines because most of the creators here write like piecemeal for their projects. So they just write like for a part of it, and then if that part is done, they'll write the next part. But you
Yeah.
wrote the entire thing already.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote the full script in 2022. So I started writing it in 2021, and then I finished the full story in 6 volumes in 2022. Um, I think I'm just like a binge kind of person generally. Um, and so like if I get into a new manga, I like read the entire, if it's 100, if it's less than 200 chapters, I'll read it in one day, right? So I think it's the same with when I'm writing. It's like I can't get
Yeah.
it out of my head until I finish it. Um, and I've gotten back and made some revisions to like especially the second half of it, but yeah, it's all done.
Because um, the reason why most of us, well, on my part, why I don't write the entire thing is because here most of us like do comics on the side only. So
Yeah.
if it's not about ready to be done yet, it's usually like put on the wayside, and then we have a rough outline of what's gonna happen with our books.
Mm,
Um, and sometimes it's like we're very impatient. So if you wrote it and it's not yet, you can't see it. Usually, it goes out of your headspace already.
mm.
Uh, aren't you like impatient to see the whole thing done? Because I know the drawing part is very it's the longest part of the production for comic books.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the first year, I was like, man, we're never gonna like I'm not gonna live to see this see this done. And then now we're getting to the halfway point. So like now that we're getting like volume 3 will be done by December. So we'll be at the halfway point soon. And so it kind of feels like we're it'll actually get finished,
So
which is
John
nice.
Ray is now focusing on finishing it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now.
Um, so and he's getting faster too. He's getting to like a chapter a month.
Mm,
Now that
yeah,
he's kind of like had a bit more experience with it and gotten used
yeah.
to it.
That's the thing with comic book projects. The first volume, the first chapter is always the longest production period. But once you get the hang of drawing the characters and you get the feel for the rhythm of the script, it gets faster.
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't even imagine. Like I'm not an artist. I think when I was little, I wanted to. Like I drew a lot when I was like when I was living in the Philippines and you know under 10 years old. I think I wanted to learn, but then I never got around to it. And so as a non-artist, I can't even imagine like if you don't know these characters, you're just starting to draw them. Like I don't. It's hard to imagine how hard it must be to kind of do, hundreds of panels of them consistently.
You have a unique perspective or a point of view among the creators here, because while you did spend part of your childhood here, you spent
Mhm,
majority of your formative years in the US.
mhm.
What's your take on the Filipino comics community? Because it's very different from from the
Yeah.
US or any other actually comics community out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wasn't as into comics when I was in the US still. It took me a little while to get back into comics again. So I was already here in the Philippines. So I never got to experience it firsthand, right? In the US, but I do like follow a lot of the kind of developments there. Um, I think on one side, like there is a bigger market and at least like enough of a market to kind of fund full-time livings for more people.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
focused on.
here in the US. It's an actual industry, so it can be an actual livelihood for comic book creators. Well, there are also underground independent types there. There are publishers that would hire you outright and you could like earn a living from it, unlike here where most
Yeah.
of our creators are working on adjacent fields, either
Mhm.
advertising or other creative fields, and
Yeah.
you don't really find employment as a comic book creator.
Mhm. Right, right. And I think in the US now too, it's because Marvel and DC had their heyday, and I think like Image really led the independent comics, kind of carving out a subset of people who can make a full-time living on non-Marvel DC stuff. But I think now also it's getting hard there uh I think Western comics uh has like they dropped I think the industry dropped the ball a bit, and like they really lost their dominance, and the indies are still kind of figuring out how to make a living out of it. So I actually feel like the Philippines can kind of get there. It's also just so expensive to like live in the US.
Yeah,
So you just have to sell so many more comics to kind of pay your bills. So I think it's actually evening out a bit. It's more like Japan and Korea are the ones that like they've built out a machinery
yeah,
and
they
industry.
built like a system for an online platform actually. Webtoons is actually uh,
Yeah.
a new format of comics that makes it possible for comic book creators to earn a
Hmm.
living making comics. One thing pala, sa mga nakikinig, for our listeners, I'm not saying that people here can't have careers in making comics.
Mm.
Uh, Actually, a lot of us sa community also have careers in comics, pero not for local publishers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Right.
so you could still be like an illustrator or in production for comics, but most of our clients and most of our employers are outside the Philippines.
Mhm.
So there's
Yeah.
still that route, there's that path. Pero what I'm saying is like even if some of us are published by book publishers here,
Mhm.
it's not our main bread and butter, but kumbaga for what we spend for our day to day.
Yeah, it's really hard to I mean it's almost impossible, right? For if you're doing it especially as a through the publisher route. Um uh I don't know, like I don't have a ton of exposure into what the deals look like, but the ones I've seen and kind of know about or have heard about are like it's like sub 100,000 pesos, like most of the time, like sub 50,000 pesos, they'll in like
Yeah,
an advance,
yeah.
after you've already finished after you've already spent
Actually,
years
that's
doing.
a conversation I had with the publisher because they do want to have local comics, like to fund
Right,
local
right.
comics, but they can't compete with, say, an indie comic book rate. Because,
Mm,
for example, $50 is $50 for a page. That's still
yeah,
that's how much? That's 2,000 plus pesos or
right, right.
3,000 to 5,000, and that's too expensive for local publishers to pay.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And yeah, it's not on the publishers at all also, right? I think their models are like they know how to make books, and I think like I think they're primarily, even if they have a big comics arm, their main business is
It's all,
like prose, like novels. And with novels, like you can, yeah, I feel like I'm a writer, so I can say it, like the writing, like writing words on a page just takes, it's less like work in terms of hours at least, right? Uh than than putting like inking pages. So it is more doable to like you can make it over in your free time if you have to. It's not ideal, but like if you have to, it's more manageable to kind of do a full book in your free time versus for a comic, yeah, it just takes years and years if you have a day job.
uh,
Um,
and I think
and
that's the problem with people gaining awareness of there's comic books here in the Philippines, but the problem is it has no schedule of when
mm,
it goes out, and that's
yeah.
pretty much what's making the Japanese comic book system works, because it's still
Mhm.
a there's a schedule that you follow, and if you
Yeah.
have a schedule to you follow, you create the habit of creating, and the culture of creating is still intact, and there's like a system involved.
Mhm.
So deadlines are always like important. Actually, that's what when I was younger, I wasn't really like um, my advice mostly to the creators would be just to create and create, but that's not enough anymore. To create like traction, to gain readership, you have to have a regular schedule
Mhm.
wherein they
Yeah.
can like look forward that next week or next month I'll get this. And without that, if you just release the book, even if it's very good, a very good book that you release once a year without follow up to it,
Yeah.
it gets forgotten easily.
Right, right. Yeah, that's the thing. Because I follow manga people in like I mean I don't follow a lot of manga, but I follow like Chainsaw Man, and it's
Yeah,
like every time there's a break week, right? Like a break week feels so long to people because they're so used to getting to like next Tuesday I'll know what happens next. And so it's hard to and I don't think in terms of like what's ideal, I don't think weekly is necessary or ideal, but like I want like I'm trying to play my part in like trying to make it so we can have more
yeah.
monthly release comics over
Even a
time.
monthly,
Yeah.
just as long as there's regularity
Right.
to
Right.
releases, so that you have like a regular engagement with the readers.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that's what pushes Manix and Sir Paul apart from the other creators, and also
Yeah.
more recently TK, because they
Yeah.
release their content regularly.
Right. Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah. And
Imagine,
I think
Sir Paul has 30 years of daily engagement because of the
yeah.
broadsheet, 20 plus years or so. Same with Manix.
Yeah.
He's published daily. So imagine that
Right.
engagement, and it always puts you in your readership's eyes, 'di ba? Hindi ka nawawala dun sa mata nung nagbabasa ng inyong comics.
Mhm.
So it's very important for creators right now, especially without our, 'di ba? Without regular scheduling, to do that on
Mhm.
their own. So parang it's very uh,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, because the formats have different uh kind of, it's partially by design, right? That like
mm,
the the manic style is like it a lot of it was also funded by the broadsheets, and like they need a kind of format that can be done daily. And so to a degree it's you can pump out kind of more content faster because you're doing it in like smaller chunks. But even then, even like the shorter form comics, like you have, I'm sure there's like thousands of people who want to be a Mannix in the country, but there's one Mannix and one like more recently one TK, one
mm,
Serpol. Like even in the short form stuff, it's still like it requires a consistency and like amount of work that can be like inaccessible to people. And so even more so when you think about the stuff that's like more 20-page chapters and like
yeah,
more elaborate designs. Um, so yeah, so I really think it'll be hard for us to get more of those, and unless we can figure out how to kind of get people more like artists like paid ahead of a full book, basically. And and so that's kind of what we're trying to figure out with Ray Gun is like we pay and we can only do a few titles because like we don't have we only have so much budget, but at least for
yeah,
those few titles like, we can pay per chapter, and so there's a bit more of a of a and enough per chapter that kind of people can set aside other work for a month or two to complete that chapter. And then kind of and the math starts to work where like we as a publisher can like make that back over the course of at least when the full volume is done. So we're absorbing the kind of the lag between like when they start on the first chapter and when the first full volume is out, and then when that full volume releases, like I mean, sells its first 1,000 copies. I think that's a year or two probably gap that like we're we're losing money on it, right? But we feel it's necessary to kind of get more of these kind of stories out there, and and I think it's something that there hasn't been a lot of appetite and ability, right? Like it's a hard kind of call to make, and who knows if we'll make it work, right? We're hopeful and optimistic that we can make it work. But it's still kind of an unproven model here in the Philippines that you can kind of take that upfront risk to make sure the writer can make time to, I mean, that artist can make time.
yeah.
Um, uh, and and that it'll be kind of worth that risk in the end. But
Well, part of this conversation series is like to show people, because that's their question usually is, why is this not regular? Why is this not?
right,
It's
right,
mostly
right.
funding. It's mostly funding.
Yeah, exactly. Because even yeah, like Webtoon, right? Like Webtoon has a lot of they have budget, but even the first year or so is just pre-production, like just planning for and like editorial for the first
Yeah.
and
The
then they get
reason
paid.
why comics
Yeah,
is like so sporadic here in the Philippines is one, it's very hard to do, and two, um, we're doing this in our spare time. So,
yeah,
uh, paid projects have more are are put much higher
mm,
in importance to do, and then
yeah,
three, like yeah, it's very hard to do.
yeah, yeah. And it's just hard to like, where would you even look for the money to is the question, right? Like when the media companies are not really, I think they're starting to a little bit, like GMA picked up Ella Arcangel, which I
Yeah,
think
but
that's
Ella did.
but it's
I
at the
mean,
end of
the LR
yeah,
animation started as an initiative by a lone creator, so
right,
it's
right, right.
more.
So they're still picking it up like closer to it's like 3 4 5 years plus of like work already, and then they
Yeah,
come in, right? Because it's also, I mean, the comparison, if you look at the industry perspective, is like there are mo like Viva now, like they know how to make a movie. They know exactly the type of movie their base wants, and they know how to make it in like a month with like 2 to 3 million pesos, and like churn it out, and then it's done, and yeah, and it's released in a month.
Yeah,
So it's like you know, spending if you're paying like good page rates, you might spend more if you're paying like closer to the international page rates, and then you have to wait a year or 2 years, and then you don't even know if the market is gonna pick it up until after that. Um so it's hard. Like I
yeah,
can
I
see
know
why
it's
more
hard.
people aren't getting on
Actually,
it,
I was
but
gonna pick your brain with
yeah,
what
yeah.
your plan with Raygun. How do you plan to distribute the books?
Mhm.
Do you have like other avenues aside from most of us, for those who are listening in, most of us sell in events. That's the that's what most of the comic book
Yeah.
creators are doing. Of course, there are other publishers that have initiatives that sell outside those said events, but
Mhm.
even the retail bookstores here are so few,
Mhm.
and their reach is also not that wide.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still kind of experimenting with a lot of it. So the events, I think events and Shopee are still
Mhm.
our primary channels. We're just now starting to get into bookstores. I think I was also I'm still kind of on the fence of like how worth it is. But I think it does get it into more in front of more people. It's just from a you sacrifice a lot of the sale and like cash flow, right? Like in terms of when you're gonna see the money. But I think there's more you can do there. The ones that we're trying more kind of like actively, if we can crack it, then hopefully it's more of a market that other creators can tap into, or like we did the Kickstarter, we were able
Yeah.
to get I would say maybe like the 100 out of the 400. I think there's 470 backers so far, with the late pledges on. So we maybe will hit 300 or 500 at the end of it. Out of that, maybe 100 are kind of existing local fans, but the 400 are actually new, like new most American and UK based. Uh, yeah, just kind of some of them are Filipino, or maybe a big chunk of them are Filipino, but then also a lot of them are just kind of international comics collectors. So we're trying to kind of crack that market for our titles, but then also be able to show, to kind of share that playbook to other comics. Hot Tropics. Angelo was one of my co-founders at Kumu when he moved back to the US. They're doing a lot of like US events and US e-commerce. Uh, so so that's one that if Hot Tropics, like succeeds at a bigger scale, then that becomes a market that more Filipino comics can tap into. Um, I tried Gumroad. I haven't had like a ton of luck with Gumroad yet for like selling digital copies. Um, and and then I think like Patreon is one I'm interested in if we can I guess all of those are along the lines of if we can somehow crack more of an international readership for Filipino comics. They exist. They exist in a smaller scale, but there is, the market of the 10 million Filipinos that live outside the Philippines. Uh, and then their kind of friends and family, I feel is a pretty big one that um, if we can get more of them consistently looking for comics, then that helps everyone.
Yeah. So, how about the local readership? How was the reception to the books?
It's been good. The local readership, actually, what surprised me is so some of our early most loyal people are from the comics community. Like I think Miko. He's
Yeah.
always he always comes like every time we have a new release. Um, but the ones that kind of like really helped us get to at least the scale that we're at now, it it was the books community, like
Yeah,
the kind of book readers on
the book
Instagram,
fairs,
and the book
the
clubs.
book fairs actually are very good
Yeah, yeah.
market
Uh,
for comics. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's one that and I feel like it's also like I mean I wasn't really looking for it 2, 3 years ago, but the from what the one that I am seeing now, like really just started to pick up the past 1 to 2 years in terms of like, these half a dozen to a dozen different book clubs that are all like talking to each other and recommending books to each other,
yeah,
and more comics are kind of part of that. So I think that's really encouraging, and I think that's the you know I mean ideal, and I think we can get to a place where like book readers in the Philippines, like comics is going to be in their diet as a staple. So there, I think the start of that is happening, but I feel like it's still the tip of the iceberg. Um, and I think Trece really kind of like showed that there is like an appetite for it when the Netflix, when the Netflix series came out, and there was a lot of people who were excited that there was a Filipino story that came from a comic that was getting that kind of treatment. Um, it's just that there hasn't been a second season, right? And they I think we just need more of kind of those things that can introduce the broader audience.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that goes to show the problem when we showed Trece. You know that there was an interest, but Trece
yeah,
has been around for almost more than a decade
right.
when it came out,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
was the
yeah.
only time that they were made aware that there was this book.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
so there's a lot of good local titles out there that are it, they just lack awareness that it exists. So I think
right.
that's something that we should like, because the people who are pushing the books are still among us. It's in very insular. The community is very insular. All the international initiatives for that puts out our books outside the Philippines are all great and good, the initiatives. But I think if the government could also have like local initiatives for reading
Yeah.
for the available books right now. I mean, I haven't seen any local counterpart to that.
Mm,
Also, let's admit it, most of our books are expensive, mostly because we're
mm,
the funding that we have for production is expensive. That's why it's
yeah,
expensive,
yeah.
and we're going up against multi-million dollar companies that produce books. That's why they can produce it at that price.
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's a really good point. And and I think there's been like announcements and like papers from the government on pushing the creative industries more, but I think like now is
Yeah,
really like
I've seen
it.
it, and I've seen the initiatives.
Yeah,
Initiatives are mostly for us to get our books out of the
yeah.
Philippines and into other markets,
Right, right, right,
right?
right.
But
Yeah, that's true.
if we do that, I mean, we should also cultivate local readership.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that's really I think the best sellers right now, for example, and the ones who pay for it aren't the full readership, but just to ballpark it, like really, really like good, on a really good year, top seller is in like the 10,000-ish copies. Um, uh, and that's like, what is that, 0.01% of the Philippines. Whereas in Korea, I remember looking at it and it was like 7% of the Korean population was on the Webtoon app like every day, like on
Yeah,
a given day, right? And so it's still like I'm not saying it's going to be as big as Korean webtoons, but I think we're still really,
We just
really
need like a way
yeah,
to get the books into the eyes of the
yeah,
local uh, readership. Because
yeah,
when I commute, a lot of students are reading comics, so they're looking for stuff to read, and they're
yeah.
reading on their phones.
Hmm.
That's why I want to touch up PenLab. PenLab was on the right track when they were
Yeah.
doing uh, the archiving and the showcasing of the titles online, because
Hmm.
it made it accessible to those who can't buy the physical
Hmm.
books.
Yeah.
And like I was what I was saying, it's engagement.
Hmm.
So if you have that readership engagement, and those who like really like your book would still buy the physical copies.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So that's just what I was looking for, some way that we could like have another platform that
Mm.
showcases books, the
Yeah.
local books. Because like I said, when Tracy came out, everyone was aware that Tracy was there, uh, but I think the timing was wrong because they were shifting into a new publisher when it came out.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So again, it's a matter of finding a way for everyone to be made aware of the books
yeah.
that
Mhm.
are already here, and also to encourage those who have would be inclined to tell their stories to try the medium. The problem with
Mhm.
that is, yun nga since we do not have that platform, it's hard to convince them to put in the work, because
Yeah.
like we've mentioned in this conversation, to make comics very hard. So putting all that effort and then nobody is
Mm.
able to read it, kaya nakakasira ng ano talaga yun.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I wonder if because we were talking about like yeah, there are publisher kind of online platforms. I don't know about as much on I haven't dug into what the plans are for the comics dot space stuff, but it seems like they're trying to build something more for everyone. But it also just takes time, right? To
It takes time to
to
like build
onboard
that
everything
community.
again. Yeah. But you're right. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, if that's one like lesson from Japan, right, is just like people were
Mhm.
pirating manga, like and not really buying much, but like just like straight up pirating for years and years and decades, and then but then it eventually like those people kind of grew up, and then they started to have a a disposable income, and they spent that money on books on the books and the merch,
Yeah, I mean,
and
even there's, I know piracy is really bad, especially for us
yeah,
creators.
yeah.
But sometimes in our case, that we do not have that wider, a bigger stage to for a wider audience to get their eyes on our product. It helps.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it helps to just kind of and even, actually for us we do the first 9 chapters are free on our Substack. But it's hard when it's like, like we're the only Filipino or I don't know if there are others, but there's not many Filipino comics on Substack, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like there's extra friction there if you want to read Maharlika there. I mean, you can read it on like your Chrome or Safari, but then you have to remember to bookmark it, and then yeah, there's just a lot kind of in the way of like regularly consuming it versus if there was something again where people could just like they get used to checking it for a new Filipino kind of comic or the new chapter of this thing they're following. Yeah, definitely. Man, I wish yeah, I wish it turned out differently on that on that
Yeah, yeah.
particular.
But it was, yeah. But that's the thing. Every 5 years there would be someone who would try
Mm.
their hand at making a platform. Ever since Comic Con started, actually, one of our sponsors during 2005 was a platform by a
Yeah.
by a telecommunications network.
Mm.
So every 5 years, there's someone who tries to do it, and I think that's the right track. It's free. It's available
Mm.
for everyone. Something that would like a gateway, a
Mm.
gateway for students or those who cannot afford to buy the books to at least try the titles.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I wonder what it, yeah, I feel like it would have to be also because I think the thing is it's hard to like getting a business to do it is just really hard to make money from it. And so I feel like it
Yeah,
has to be a nonprofit effort, right? It has to be a nonprofit
that's
effort.
why every 5 years they would try. Then for
Yeah.
the first few years,
Right, right.
maybe just a
And the problem,
year.
yeah, the problem with the nonprofit effort is that like you get volunteers, you get
Yeah,
burned out
it's
and
the same
tired
thing
after
with
a couple of
publishing.
months. So
For
yeah.
publishing comics, to gain that traction, to have that readership that would like sustain you, would have
Hmm.
to be at least 3 years of
Yeah.
continuous uh, putting out the title. But
Yeah,
to do that
exactly.
3 years, how much money would you outlay then?
Yeah, right, right.
And most of those who would be willing to invest would like their investment to come back again.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
So
feel like there's
it's
gotta be
quite
a way to
hard
do.
on
Yeah.
both sides that would be financiers and for those who would do the comics. If it does not make money kaagad, it's
Mm.
very disheartening talaga with the amount of effort and the amount of
Mm.
money that you put out it.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And I do
So
think, I mean, I don't, also not necessarily on the, it could be a platform. It could be just getting it in. I think there are comics, like I don't know if mine would be maybe on like the higher like the uh at the college levels maybe. But I think there are comics that like deserve to be also like invested in terms of the government just getting them more in like in the school system. I think
yeah,
Elmer should be like literature that people
I think
should kind of grow
that's
up
another
reading.
thing that we should really
Um,
focus on. As in, we should focus on getting the books into kids' hands and to children, not
yeah.
children. I mean, students' hands, because
Mhm.
that's what happened with superhero comics. It becomes so insular,
Yeah.
and then it's not really like if you're a new reader, you have decades of
Mm.
baggage continuity to to sift through. So parang you should like make stuff always for new readers. And these new readers would be the new creators. So
Yeah.
it's a cycle that it's something that I've observed with making comics and also organizing events that you really have
Mhm.
to like encourage the next generation of readers and creators all the time so that it
Mhm.
continues and it continues.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think for me um it wasn't until I saw Tresse that I was like uh like I feel like actually yeah, I can make a story, put it out there in this medium. And there's something close to home also from just seeing it because obviously like we hear I before I got back into comics and manga, I like obviously knew that comics and manga had a had I mean, manga in particular had a big readership in I mean around the world. But it didn't like hit close to home until I saw Tressa and I was like, oh yeah, shit, I should actually like think of
Yeah.
getting into this. Like seeing another Filipino do it and with a
Actually,
story.
funny that you mentioned Tracy because that's the exact same thing that happened to me when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I attended an Alamat event in
Mm,
Galleria and saw that, hey, you could make comics. I mean, you don't have to work for any publishers, but you
mm.
could make your own comic.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was
Yeah,
still
yeah.
budget. So budget was like influencing a lot of creators, even in the 90s.
Yeah, it's always been, I don't know, for me it's always kind of been like that. Like I don't it doesn't click for me until I see someone that kind of feels in my plane of exist. Like when I got into before comics, I got into kind of startups in business. It wasn't until like I had a friend that like started her own company and was like doing a decent job of it that I looked over and I was like, okay, like if this person could do it that's like similar to me in this way, like I could do it, you know? So I think just getting more of that out there is really important. Um, I think there's always a multiplier of like, and especially if you get to work next to each other. Like in manga, a lot of it is like the assistants of different comic like Chainsaw Man assistant or Tatsuki Fujimoto assistants um go on to make Spy Family and Dan the Dan and Hell's Paradise.
Imagine the assistants of Toriyama. Toriyama's assistants did a lot of manga too after they did it. So
Yeah.
it's a, well, that's what we don't have, but we did have before was a legacy of continuing the culture of creating comics. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but that's an entire different conversation.
Right. But yeah, I guess, first step is just getting even more people to know about it, right?
Yeah,
And open and read a chapter of kind of one comic. I feel like there's not even probably even less than 1% of the Philippines right now has like read one chapter of a comic that's not like a one page broadsheet kind of
yeah.
format, right? Um uh
So yeah,
so yeah,
so that we've talked
really.
a lot about challenges of the local books. Uh, what do you think would be the most single important advice you would give to those who want to make comics?
Mm, I think just um the most important. I think just getting to your first if you're just getting started, like getting to your first complete story, I think um is a big step. Or like complete even as a chapter, right? Like that first kind of thing that you can present to people, and I think that there's something powerful in that moment where you see somebody kind of step into your world that's
Yeah.
kind of lived in your head. Um, so I think that's kind of the start of it, and then um, and I think also uh, kind of like maximizing just getting it out there, like what getting on the free platforms, on the like Maharlika, the sales that we've had this year, I feel like are all attributable to just like free copies, like 20 or 30 free copies I gave out last year that kind of snowballed into people telling their friends about it and that kind of thing. Uh, and and it's always going to start small, right? Like it's always going to be like even like the first five people and the first 10 people,
Yes.
but I think that's how you build the momentum is kind of delivering that and then also starting to continuously deliver uh and yeah, and if you can kind of keep the hard part is getting it consistent. That's kind of the next challenge, uh but if you can kind of yeah, if you can unlock consistency, which I mean you've also been doing, right, over 20
Over
years now that
yeah,
Comic-Con
over
has
20 years, yes.
were you also an artist and writer at the from year one of Comic-Con, or
Uh most of the people know me for comic production. So I did a lot of pre-press stuff.
yeah.
Toning, coloring, and lettering for other publishers. And I also write. And I also draw. But when I started, I was mostly a writer because I wasn't really like, I was lazy to do.
Yeah, it's the easy part. The writing's the easy part.
Pero yeah, tama si sir, just continue. When you start something, make sure to finish it.
Mm,
Even just a chapter, even just like the first scene, a scene actually,
mm,
even a scene from the story that you want to make.
yeah. And it's like, and I think it's like just be prepared for it to be bad for a while also is another thing. Like I started writing and publishing stuff when I was like just online on Fiction Press when I was 10, 12 years old, I think, and they were like awful. Like when I look back at it, and luckily it's not like a username I use anymore, so no one can tie it to me. But it's terrible, and I couldn't finish it, and I couldn't like, or I had like very short ones that I finished, and that was kind of a first step. But I think there's always going to be a period where like you're ashamed of what you're doing, and, but you just know that that's necessary, and just get through it, and then eventually you kind of get to a point where you you find your flow. And I think that's the part, that trough of like making stuff that is bad and you know is bad. Um, that's getting through that is also even more of a challenge now because there's always a temptation for, especially if you're growing up, if you're in school right now, there's always a temptation of like, oh, there's ChatGPT, right? And
Oh
like
yeah,
it
it's
writes
a
so much
whole
better than
different
like, if
long
you're a shitty writer,
conversation.
if you're a shitty writer, like, and you haven't done your work yet, like, it's gonna be so tempting to go that route and just never learn.
Yeah. If you
Uh,
use AI and you haven't like
uh,
mastered fundamentally writing,
mm,
you'll never learn to write properly. So
yeah.
just like what Sir said, just power through it. You'll have your cringe face, then you'll get your own voice, you'll get your creative muscle more toned, more well honed, and then you'll be proud of the work that you did instead of relying on uh, AI. But that's another conversation, like I
Yeah,
said.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a whole
That's a whole different, because there's like, I know there are like people who use it for their process right now, but these are
Mhm,
people who have experience, that have prior experience without AI before. So
mhm.
they know how to use it and they know how to edit it. But if you do not know the basics of what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do and you just rely on it, you'll continue to rely on it until you don't even you don't realize, you don't even know how to formulate ideas
Hmm.
anymore without it.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's the scariest part for me um on the AI art part. Because I think, I mean, maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I feel like one, like maybe it won't be I'm hoping it, it doesn't get as good as like human created stuff. Who knows? Like it's hard to tell at this point. So you also kind of have to assume that quality wise, it's going to get up there. But I think even if the quality is the same, like there's always going to be people who look for things made by humans.
Yes.
Um, and so I think there's always going to be some market for the authentic human, no AI stuff. Uh, and so I'm not so much worried about kind of that disappearing in the future. I am worried about like young people never like just
Yeah,
losing
that's the
their
worrying part. Like, I
yeah.
know there are like companies who use AI right now and they hire people to edit what the AI did.
Mm,
But imagine that those people have experiences that they had, so they know how to edit that AI stuff, of
mhm,
how to improve it. But what would happen if that's because those people have entry level jobs, like they did like storyboarding, they did like visualizing, they did all other grunt work. Imagine if there's like no more entry level work for stuff. So who would have that experience after a decade?
yeah, yeah.
So who would edit what you think is, there's something wrong with this illustration? So
Mhm.
I don't know how to.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So I think it's like you're doing something right if you're making stuff that you like don't, the it's making you cringe for, especially if you're starting out.
Yeah, and that's how you know correct stuff, because
Mhm.
you went through the process of making mistakes.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah,
Otherwise, if you
everything
don't make
I'm
mistakes,
like I always like, oh man, as soon as I put it out there, I have a period of being like, yeah, that was great. That was like the best. And then a few months pass and I'm like, oh no, like I should have done this differently. I should have done this differently. And I feel like that's how I kind of like learn over time is kind of just consistently like getting ashamed of things of how I did things before or like realizing I could do it better.
yeah. So yeah, we have a ton more to talk about, but I guess we've already passed an hour. So
Yeah,
thank you
yeah.
very much, sir, for your time for talking to me and sharing your experiences and knowledge with our listeners kung may nanonood ba ito.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
thanks for having me.
yeah, I always wanted actually to invite you before. I think something just natapos na lang yung I have this cycle of
Mhm.
super uh, gana, as in may gana
Mm.
akong gumawa. So I did 100 plus episodes and then I didn't want to do it anymore. so so now I'm starting the cycle again. So I'm going
Yeah.
to creators that I haven't talked to. So I'm very glad that you nagpresenta kayo when I was asking for people who wants to be interviewed or makausap. So thank you very much. Where can they find your books online?
Yeah, best online is on Shopee. It should be the first result for Maharlika Comics. And then if
Ayan.
you search Rexy or John Ray with it,
Yun.
it should be the first result. It's the Makiling Maid store. And then in person, best place is Manila Middle Ground in Comuna, Makati.
Mm.
That's John Ray's. He's one of the owners of it, and so he's also there. I want to say like once or like two or three times a week. So if you go on the right day, you can see him there working on Maharlika pages, and you can sign your copy.
And for those watching, do you have any events before the for the year end if they want to meet you in person?
I'm trying to set something up early December, but and we have a table in Pascomicat, but I won't be there. But I might have something early December, in which case we'll probably post about it on Instagram.
Plus
It's
Comic Con
Maharlika.
is this weekend, right?
Yeah, this weekend, this
Yeah.
weekend.
So this
Um,
weekend, if you want to buy like for gifts, malapit na
yeah,
Christmas, buy
yeah,
books from Raygun Press, Maharlika Comics, and their other titles.
yeah. Thank you. And then Volume 3 probably launching, aiming for a January 11 is what we're aiming for the Volume
Also,
3.
it's that finished na. Is it finished na?
Almost. We'll I think January will finish the last chapter in December, at like the very end of December, um and then we'll see how fast we can print the first batch of copies after that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Cool.
So, everyone who watched this, hindi ko na alam yung spiel ko ng closing. So, so ano na lang, share nyo yung conversation nyo if you find it interesting. Follow nyo yung kung saan ko man to i-upload. I don't know kung saan ko to i-upload. Tapos, follow nyo si sir, follow nyo, buy yung box nila. And thank you for your time na panood and listen to us. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, man. Bye.